Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for our latest Book and Tonic banter panel, the Great British Staycation. We've got three brilliant authors on the panel this evening, and I'm delighted to introduce them to you now. So the first author we have is Della Galton. She's a best-selling author of romantic reads set on the gorgeous Dorset coast. Her newest release, Shooting Stars Over Bluebell Cliff, comes out later this month. Jessica Redland is a top 10 best-selling author of uplifting stories of love and friendship set in North Yorkshire. All You Need Is Love was her latest release and came out last month. And finally, Lisa Hobman, best-selling author of feel-good novels set in Scotland. Her newest release, Dreaming Under an Island Sky, is out now and doing brilliantly in the Kindle Top 40. So please join me in welcoming our panellists. As always, don't forget, ask lots of questions. And if you do ask a question, you will be with a chance of winning a ebook or audiobook copy of each of our panelists' newest releases. So please don't be shy, ask lots and lots of questions, and join me in welcoming our lovely panelists. Hello, ladies.
Hello.
Right, I'm going to do it, but thank you so much, and I'm really looking forward to this.
Thank you for the lovely introduction, Nia, and great to see everybody. So we've got some pre-prepared questions, as Nia said, that we'll all kind of give an answer to, but do fire away and we will slot in any questions we get from you in between those. So what we're going to start with, the title of this panel is The Great British Staycation, and Nia popped that as a subject on Twitter, on our little advert, and there started to be a little bit of banter and a bit of debate as to what staycation actually meant. So that's where we're going to start. What do you think counts as a staycation? So we'll go to Della first with that one.
Well, technically, I was looking this up because apparently it's quite controversial, but technically I'm guessing it's just staying at home and doing stuff, having a holiday, but not actually going anywhere, staying at home and doing stuff at home in your own where home is possibly a bit controversial. How far can you go from home?
Lovely.
I would go to the. I think.
And what about you, Lisa? What does staycation mean to you?
Well, until this evening, I think I always took it as meaning you stay in the country that you live in and you sort of go on holiday, you know, roundabout near where you live. But having thought about it and hearing the other answers, I'm now beginning to think I was perhaps wrong. It is a case of staying at home and doing things like day trips and such. That's probably makes more sense.
It's an interesting one. Yeah, by the sounds of it, it's not something any of us have particularly thought about, or maybe even used as a phrase. I've never ever said I'm on a staycation or going on a staycation, but in my head it was what you were thinking, Lisa. It's about being on holiday but in your home country. So for me it's something that you don't have to get your passport out for, and you're not going by a boat or a plane to get to. I live in England, in North Yorkshire, so I would class Scotland and Wales as a staycation, because I'm not travelling anywhere off the island, but I would class Northern Ireland as part of the UK. That would be an actual holiday because I'd be on a boat or a
travel.
Travel there. Having said that, and then realised, that gets really controversial, because what would the Isle of Man or the Isle of Wight or the Isle of Skye be? Because you do have to go maybe on a boat. Actually, Isle of Skye is a bridge. There's a bridge.
You can go by boat, but the most common route is the bridge.
But even, a bit like Della, I looked it up, and the definitions massively differ online, where some definitions from reliable sources are adamant that it's a period where you stay at home and you go on day trips, and others are adamant it's an actual holiday in your home country. So interesting, but not a phrase I've particularly used in the past, but I guess we're talking about this staycation because we all write about resorts are very popular, whether as day trips or as holiday destinations. So let's talk a little bit next about our latest release, upcoming release, or the series that we're working on, so depending on where we are. So Lisa, would you like to start by telling us about where you are?
Well, my latest release is set on the Isle of Skye, Dreaming Under an Island Sky. It's a place that I've been on holiday and day trips when we've been up in the sort of north of Scotland. And it tells the story of a lady called Juliet, who has suffered tragedy in her life, and she's kind of been treated like a little fragile doll by the people around her after the tragedies occurred, and she just decides she needs to wipe the slate clean and get away and kind of find herself again, because she started off as Juliet the librarian, and you know that was sort of her identity. Then she was married, and then things happened I won't spoil, but she ended up in a situation where she was alone, and as I say, being treated, being wrapped in cotton wool by people. So the trip that she takes to the Isle of Skye is actually kind of a family connection, because her mum was born on the Isle of Skye, and so she kind of kills two birds with one stone, if you like. She decides that she's going to travel to the Isle of Skye to find out about her mother's upbringing and where her mother was born, but she also needs to find herself again and discover who she is in the sort of current circumstances she finds herself in. And there's lots of very pretty scenery, hopefully, because the Isle of Skye is one of the most stunning places that I've ever visited. So hopefully that comes across in the story.
I am delighted to say I have actually read your book, Lisa, and it's stunning. And the one thing I did immediately when I finished it was think, I have to go to the Isle of Skye as soon as I can start traveling again, because it does sound absolutely beautiful.
Oh, that's lovely. Thank you.
You're welcome. So I'll tell you a little bit about my latest release. All You Need Is Love came out a month ago, and it's a re-release of a book that was originally under the title of Bear With Me that I had as an independent release, and Boldwood got the rights to that, and we gave it a fresh polish, new title, new cover. And what this does, it tells a story of two main characters, so told in two perspectives, Gemma and Sam, and they start the book as strangers, but their lives come together through a mutual friend when Sam helps Gemma out with something that he needs a bit of advice on. And it's very much about two people who have lost the love of their life in very, very different circumstances, who find an acquaintance and then a friendship, and then it's having lost the love of their life, can they actually be brave enough to take the step to let love in again? And would that work for them if they did? So it's one of my favourite books of all the ones that I've written, so I do hope that the readers do enjoy it. But I'm going to sneak another one in, because I've also got another release coming out in about 3 weeks' time, which is the third book in the Hedgehog Hollow series, which is Family Secrets at Hedgehog Hollow, and that will be out on the 4th of May. So what about you, Della? Tell us a bit about your latest release.
I want to go to both of those places now, the Isle of Skye too. My books are set in Dorset. I'm the Dorset writer, and my latest one is about a television producer who is commissioned by Netflix to do a pilot for a dating series. And if you just think a cross between Take Me Out and It's a Knockout, you'll pretty much get an idea of the kind of dating series it is. The contestants have to perform challenges along the Dorset coastline to win the hand of the leading lady. So that's what my book's about. That's what Shooting Stars Over Bluebell Cliff's about. And it's all set in Studland, the Isle of Purbeck, all around the coastline, basically.
Okay, lovely, thank you. And is that, am I right in thinking that's a part of the series, Della?
Yes, it's part of the Bluebell Cliff series. I happen to have them here, actually. So that's the Bluebell Cliff, and that's the next one along, actually. And the Bluebell Cliff is a hotel, which is a fictitious hotel, which is set up on Ballard Down, which overlooks Old Harry Rock. So again, on the coastline. And a lot of the filming in this book takes place in the Bluebell Cliff Hotel. So although it is a series, they are all standalone books as well, which I think we might be coming on to.
Yes, lovely. Thank you for that. Now, just before we move on to the next question, a few people to say hello to. So hi to Grace Power, Sheila Riley, Pat Posner, Mary Grand, Linda Hill, Judy Lee, Jenny Benet, Eliza Scott, Sharon Booth, Amans Rose, Ian Wilfred. They're all the names I've been given. We can't actually see everybody who's joined. So if anybody else has joined whose name I haven't read out, hello and thank you so much for joining us this evening. I was going to say great to see you, but I can't see you, so won't do that. Okay, I'll ask, there's a question just popped up, but I will just ask the next pre-prepared one first, because it might then give a context to the next one. Is your location real or fictional? And then linked to that, what are the challenges of writing about a real place, and what are the challenges of writing about a fictional place? I'll start with that one. I write in two settings. All of my books are either set in Whitspur Bay or Hedgehog Hollow, and both of them are fictional. And both of them are modelled on real places. Hedgehog Hollow is very much set in the Yorkshire Wolds, which is between North Yorkshire and East Yorkshire, kind of spread across the two. But because we're talking about staycations, I'm focusing mainly on Whitspur Bay as my setting. Now, I made a conscious decision right at the beginning, before I started writing, that whatever my setting turned out to be, it was going to be fictional. And the reason for that was that I didn't want readers to read about a real place and go, that doesn't exist, and that's not there, and the colour of that building's changed, and this, that, and the other. Because I write a lot about community, can you use real names of pubs, cafes, hotels? Potentially, if something goes wrong there, you're in a tricky situation. So I decided that a fictional setting would give me a lot more scope to create the world that I wanted to create. It gives me scope to add things in that maybe don't exist in the place that inspires it. So, for example, in the place that does inspire my books, and we'll talk about that in another question, there isn't a river, but I wanted there to be a river, so I added one into my fictional setting. And you can do that, and you can swap things around and change things around. Now, an unexpected downside that I found to that, which I really, really hadn't preempted, was that I did get a negative review from somebody saying, I really struggled with this book because I recognised it as the place it's predominantly based on. And that made it very hard for me, because I kept picturing that place, but it's not that place. But I thought that was really weird, because the vast majority of people say, I loved it because I recognised that from my holidays, from my childhood, etc. I think that was maybe just an extreme reaction from one person. But I would imagine it's probably also more challenging to keep writing about a different fictional setting if you do that for every book that you write, because you have to create somewhere from scratch. Because I only have two worlds, I know those worlds, and I can keep adding things onto it and expanding them, but I might struggle to think a bit more with somewhere fictional if every single book was a standalone in a new place. So what about you, Della? Real or fictional, and what challenges do you think there are with taking either of them?
Well, I'm absolutely real. I use Dorset, and I use Studland Bay, and I use Corfe Castle, Portlandville, all around Dorset. But what I also do, and I'm totally with you on that, is you've got to be careful with fiction. My hotel is not real. My hotel is based on a real hotel. It's based on my parents' hotel, in fact, that they had for 25 years. But I've moved the hotel. Their hotel is actually in Bournemouth, and I've moved what's kind of their hotel, an Art Deco building, to Ballard Down. There is no hotel up there. So it's kind of a combination between fictional and real. And what I also do is I tend to use real places ever such a lot, but if I'm getting really specific and going to a specific cafe on a specific road, that would be fictionalized, and I would also change the name of the road, and I would create a suburb of the main town. Like, for example, I've created a suburb of Swanage that's called Brankham, which does not exist, so that I can have a bit more freedom to do what I like in Brankham without offending anybody.
I like that idea. As you said, it's very much a combination of kind of both approaches, really, isn't it? So lovely. What about yourself, Lisa?
A little bit similar to Della, really, because the location in Dreaming Under an Island Sky is a little village called Glentoran, and it's the first of a series of books that are going to take place in that same location. However, it's based loosely on Kyleakin, just over the Skye Bridge. And like Della said, that there were things that I wanted to include that weren't there. So I created Glentoran with Kyleakin in mind, but I added buildings that weren't there, and I added sort of descriptions of the scenery that surrounds it that's maybe not quite as it actually is in Kyleakin itself, which I think it does give you that freedom to be a little bit more creative. And it's the first book where I've actually written about a fictional place. And it's funny because you do get a different reaction, because in books that I've written before, I've often had messages from people saying, oh, after reading this book, I actually went and found the place and visited it, which is an amazing feeling, because obviously, they've gone to that location because you've sort of inspired them to do that. And then, when you start writing somewhere completely fictional, you sort of have that niggle of guilt in the back of my mind. The readers won't actually be able to go and particularly find this place. They'll find somewhere that resembles it ever so slightly, but not completely. So that's probably been the challenge for me in writing somewhere fictional, is that it's the first time I've done this. So it's a little bit different for readers who've read my work before, because they've known that whatever I've written about, they can go and they can say, oh yeah, that's such and such a place, and and I can stand here and I can imagine this particular scene going on. Whereas that's something that in this latest book and the series that follows on, they wouldn't necessarily be able to do that, but I do have people that have messaged saying that they want to visit the Isle of Skye, because there are places in the book that are real, and the scenery that I've described is real. It's just the centre of the story is fictional. But it is quite challenging.
Lovely, thank you for that. Now we're getting bombarded with questions at the moment, so this is fabulous. So what I'll do is I'll take a break from what we've got here and ask some of those. So going in order, Linda Hill has asked, what is the most romantic thing to happen to you all? So I don't know, so I'm going to need to think in time. As question master, I get to drop this on somebody else. So, Lisa, let's start with you. Can you think?
Right. I think it has to be my proposal from my husband. We met in 1992, and that was in sort of the beginning of the year. That was in the January, and then in the December, we'd moved. Things happened very quickly, and we moved in together very quickly. I think it was one of those, when you know situations. And we moved in together in the summer, and then at Christmas, we'd finished opening all the gifts. It was our first Christmas in our own house, just the two of us. And we finished opening all the gifts, and then Richard, my husband, said, I think there's something missing. There's another present that I've got that I've not come across it yet. And he disappeared, and he came back, and it was a little velvet box with an engagement ring in. So that was like, oh, it was really sweet. But that probably is my most romantic thing that I can think of.
Oh, I like that one. Thank you. What about you, Della? Can you think of one?
I was panicking because I could think of quite a few, and I was thinking, which ones can I say?
All of them.
The one that comes to mind, that's fortuitous, is to do with dogs, and it comes back to dogs. I'd lost I had a white German Shepherd, Katie, and I lost her. She was relatively old, but I lost her on Christmas Eve it was, and I missed her so much because I love dogs, and I've always got dogs around me. And a year after she died, my husband at the time sent me a photograph of this white fluffy puppy, and he had actually gone and got this puppy, and he was just sending me a photograph with him holding this puppy to show me as a surprise. And it was a white German Shepherd, and we called her Maggie. And that has to go down, I think, although there's been lots of romantic things. I was just absolutely blown away to see this. They're so fluffy, white German shepherds. They're not like normal hair. They've got fur instead of it. And it was haven't got hair now either. That's some time ago, but it stands out in history.
Oh, that's lovely.
That's lovely.
Oh, cute. Oh, what am I going to say? My husband isn't massively romantic, but every so often he does some lovely things. So I don't know that I'd call it romantic as such, but it was something that meant a lot to me, and that was on the day that my very first book got published. So back before Boldwood, I had bought out in quite quick succession a novel, but also a novella. The novella was to kind of bring people into my reading, and then there would be a series that came out. And unbeknown to me, he'd got a local guy to print a canvas of the book cover of the novel, the book cover of the novella, 2 different canvases, and another one that would go in the middle that had a quote on that he'd found that had appeared at the end of a film he'd watched. He can't remember what the film was now, but the quote just appeared, and he just looked at it and thought, gosh, that is just perfect for me. And the quote, and I'm just looking at my wall, because on my wall it says, it's a quote from Mark Twain, and it says, "The 2 most important days in your life are the day you were born and the day you find out why." And that was kind of always, from the moment he met me, I had a dream that I would love to be a writer, and I was having a go at writing and playing with it a bit. And it took me 10 years to write my debut book, and then a couple of years after that before it came out. And it was just, he'd supported me in all that time for doing that. And so to just, the canvases were beautiful, but to have the one in the middle with that particular quote, and then with love from him and my daughter, that was just such a lovely thing. And also out of character for him, because he doesn't tend to do stuff like that. Probably my most romantic one. And the canvases with the pictures aren't on the walls, because I've got, those books are different now, but the one about and I keep looking up there because that's where it is, the quote, that will remain on my wall always.
Oh, that's lovely.
Thank you. I get really tearful when I give that quote. Anytime I mention it, I go, oh. So we've got some more questions from Grace Power. Where do you get your inspiration from? So I'll start with Della.
It's always from people, and it's always from life. And one of the massive things, I suppose, is I write on my emotions quite a lot. So it'll be something that's moved me, or someone that I love, I think, and inspiration would tend to come from there. But there's different types, isn't there? I mean, there's inspiration for characters, inspiration for settings. But I would say it's something that has to move me in order for me to be able to write about it with authenticity, I think.
Okay. And for me, it's all different things. I've had a story, my very debut one was based on a personal real life experience. And when it happened to me, I thought, well, that'd be a good premise for a book. And then when I was writing that one, I needed to create 2 best friends for the main character. And suddenly they came alive with a story of their own and became another 2 books. And then I was asked to write a prequel, and that came alive into an entire book as well. Another one has come from the lyrics from a song. There was just a particular line in a song that got me thinking, what if, and that stemmed something. My Hedgehog Hollow one just came from an exercise I was given as part of my master's in creative writing. We needed to put a character in a situation that they were uncomfortable in and describe that. And I thought, what could I have? Somebody who is bridesmaid for somebody she knows, and she wishes she was marrying the groom. Who could it be? Well, the best friend seemed a bit predictable, but what if it was a cousin? So she can't not stay in that person's life. And that became the start of Hedgehog Hollow, but I married that with the fact that my auntie is a real life hedgehog rescuer, and pulled those 2 settings together. So it's lots and lots of different things, and I tend to find as I write a book, new characters will arrive on a page, new settings will arrive on a page. I've just finished writing my 13th book, and on the back of that I've got 2 more stories that would never have been in my head if I hadn't written that book. So yeah, they often books spring other books. What about yourself, Lisa?
My writing journey initially was inspired by Scotland. you probably can tell from the accent, I'm actually from Yorkshire myself, West Yorkshire, and we used to go on holiday to Scotland quite regularly when my daughter was little. And I don't know, again, I had a dream that I wanted to be a writer, and I when I was little, I was always writing stories, and it was something that I just thought that other people did. I didn't think that it was something that I could ever do. But we went on holiday, gosh, a long time ago now, must be 17 years ago, and we visited a little place called Clackensile. I've probably said that completely wrong, but there's this little bridge, and it's known as the bridge over the Atlantic. And just as we stood there on the bridge, these characters sort of started, and it sounds ridiculous, but they kind of started speaking to me, and I had these ideas of people who might live in the houses there, and so it was that place that inspired me initially. And then ever since then, we moved to Scotland back in 2012. So I really now I'm rooted in the place that I absolutely love. And so every story that's followed has been around, inspired by places I've visited, and by scenery. And the book that I released last, not Dreaming Under an Island Sky, but the one before that, was actually inspired by a Proclaimers song. I'm going to be 500 miles, and the song was inspired by that. And so I think inspiration comes from so many different places, but for me, it always seems to be linked to Scotland or something Scottish. And now I live here, so that's quite nice because I've got access to the whole country. It's fantastic.
And I only heard that thing about the Proclaimers recently, but you showed on Facebook a photo of them holding your book, didn't you?
Yeah, that was amazing. Yeah, I wrote to their manager and just happened to mention that their song, and in fact their music in general, because I absolutely love their music anyway. And I told him that their song had inspired this book, and he invited me. He said, "Can you send me a copy?" So I sent him a copy, and he said, "I'll get the boys to stand and have a photograph with your book." When I thought, "Oh my God, that's incredible!" And then he said, "In fact, we're playing in Melrose, which is just up the road from you. I'll send you some tickets, and I'll send you some VIP access tickets as well, so you can come backstage afterwards and meet them." And I was absolutely gobsmacked. Made a complete fool of myself, because of course when you meet people who you've admired for a long time, you kind of go when you're trying to speak. But so I've got a photograph of me and the boys and my husband and my book, and that was an incredible moment. That was a real proud moment. Very, very exciting.
That is such a brilliant story. Love it. We've got another question in from Pat Posner, which I think very much relates to what we've just been talking about. So we'll just I'll ask it, and it'll just quickly wrap that part up, which is what comes first when you're creating or when you're starting a new book? Is it place or characters? So if I take that first, I would say for me it's a bit of both, in that I've already got my place. I've got Whitspur Bay or I've got Hedgehog Hollow. So then within that, I tend to think, am I going to write, if we take Whitspur Bay, I have a street that's full of independent shops and cafes. So am I going to set it in one of those, in which case then the place will come, and then who is running that, and the character will come. But on other times, a character will arrive fully formed onto a page, maybe in another book, and I'll go, I'll have him or her in a future one, and it starts then with the character. What about you, Lisa?
Similar to you, to be quite honest. It's a case of it may be I visit somewhere and a story sparks, or I know from previous books, the character has maybe been there in sort of lurking in the background, but they've never maybe had their story told, and I've sort of put them on the back burner and thought, at some point, I will tell your story at some point. And then they may not even turn up in anything to do with the book that was the original story. They'll probably pop up somewhere completely different. But it's like a character trait that might spring to mind, or something about a person, and that character will stay with me, and then, as I say, eventually they get their own story, but it may be in a completely different way to what I originally anticipated. I like to be unpredictable.
Why not? And what about you, Della?
Yeah, I'm with you. You both actually. They're very wrapped up together, I think, character and setting, because certain characters live in certain places, basically, and because I'm writing coastal things, is there a certain kind of character that lives by the coast? I mean, I was born in Bournemouth. I was born by the sea, and my parents had a hotel for 25 years. So my characters tend to be some people that are going to fit around that. But also, I agree, I have characters that crop up in other books, and every so often I'll do something like, I think, right, I would like an older person, so I'll grab one out of a book who I've written about before, and they'll come into this book, and then before I know it, I find that they've got a much bigger part than I ever planned. Because they tend to take off a bit on their own. I've got a dog in the background chewing a lump of wood. I hope you can't hear that. I'm trying to get my attention because I'm busy on the computer and she doesn't want me to be busy.
Oh, bless. What's the dog's name?
It's Ella.
Oh, my dog's called Ella as well. How spooky.
Wow.
She is not in the background chewing a piece of wood, though, thankfully. You would be able to hear that.
I should have.
Oh, bless. So we'll go back and kind of sort of linked a little bit to that. We'll talk a little bit more about our location. Why did you choose to write in the location that you're writing in your books? And what does that location mean to you? And there are some points of this I think have cropped up already, but kind of just wrap that up. So Della, would you like to start?
Yeah, I choose to write in my location because I love it. And obviously one of the things about writing, which is absolutely brilliant, is that when you're writing a story set in a place, you spend a lot of time there. So why not spend a lot of time in a place that you would really love to be? And also, of course, you have to research it. So I'm forever popping up perfectly legitimately to go to Studland or to Weymouth at the moment it is, but Studland before, and walking on the beach. And this is research, so better than that.
It's a great excuse, isn't it? And what about you, Lisa?
Mine was, I've probably covered it already, but mine was really to do with a place that I absolutely fell in love with on the first time I visited it. The first time we visited Scotland, it was like, it probably sounds really cliche, but it was like coming home, and it felt like, eventually I wanted to live there because it was just somewhere that really grabbed me. And again, I think, like Della said, you write about a place, and if you know it well, I think that your sort of your feelings about the place shine through in what you write. And I've just, ever since, I've tried writing other locations, but I always end up coming back to Scotland. So my characters will head off somewhere else, but they always end up back somewhere in Scotland because that's where my heart is. That's where, that's home to me.
Yeah, I can completely understand that. And it's obviously for all of us, location is just absolutely so pivotal to what we do. And it's quite interesting as far as I go with location, in that my locations, Witzborough Bay and Hedgehog Hollow, have become so synonymous with my writing. And yet when I started writing, I didn't have a location, didn't have one at all. My debut novel, what later became New Beginnings, Seaside Blooms, it started in London, so it had London setting, and initially a lot was happening down in London. In the final version, not so much. And I knew the character was going to move home at some point, and that home would be northern, because I am northern. But what northern looked like, I hadn't a clue. And it probably didn't help that my home was in Teesside, but my parents had moved away when I'd left home, or a little bit after I'd left home, and had moved to North Yorkshire. So I kind of didn't have somewhere myself that was called home that I could go, yeah, that's where I'm writing about. And shortly after I started writing, I met my husband, and I moved to very close to where my parents were in North Yorkshire, and my husband was from Scarborough born and bred. And as soon as I came across to Scarborough, and it's somewhere I had visited a couple of times as a child, but didn't know it very well at all. And as soon as I came, I thought, do you know, that's my setting. I've got somewhere. So what I write is predominantly modelled on Scarborough, but it's got elements of Whitby up the coast, which is somewhere I knew very well because Teesside's very close to Whitby, and another place called Robin Hood's Bay in between the two. And you can probably guess where the name Whitborough Bay came from when you've got Scarborough, Whitby and Robin Hood's Bay. Mixed in. I wasn't particularly imaginative there. I've lived in Scarborough for 16.5 years now, and I'm a bit like Della. It's just the idea that it's on your doorstep. I can go nip down the beach anytime I want, explore, look at buildings, describe them. It's here, and it's just so lovely. And the location has become so important to me. I absolutely love the area where I live. I love the coast. I love the countryside. I love the fact that it's a town rather than a village, because although village settings are gorgeous, you become a little bit restricted if you want to create a world, because a village can only get so big, and there's kind of so much scope as to what I can do. And yeah, like the rest of this, it's just about absolutely feeling passionate about that. And I think when you do, it comes across to your readers, and see so many comments in the reviews about, gosh, I either know the area and love it, or I absolutely can't wait to go and visit that area. So let's have a look at what are the questions we have got here. From Judy Lee. Judy asks, who would you most like to go on a staycation with? So I guess that depends whether staycation means staying at home or whether it's going on holiday. And I guess if we're talking staying at home, we've been on a staycation yet not able to go anywhere for well over a year already. But for me, I think I am going on to what I would call staycations this year. We are going, myself, my husband, my 14-year-old daughter and the dog. We're off to, get the right way round, we're off to the Lake District near Thirlmere in August, and we're off to Hawes in the Yorkshire Dales in October. And I just can't wait to spend some family time that isn't family time where I can easily nip off and just go and do something on the computer. So some quality family time outdoors. That will be so nice. So my needs aren't great at the moment. It's being somewhere other than here and outdoors. What about you, Della?
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. It depends very much. Who would I go with? It depends on what I would be doing, I suppose. I really miss, one of the things I've missed massively is going to writers' conferences and conventions and just seeing all my friends who I only see maybe once a year or twice a year, because we all come from different parts of the country. I guess that's not really a staycation, is it? It depends if it's in your country. I guess it is.
Let's call it that. Yeah.
I mean, otherwise, I'd probably with my partner. I'd probably want to go somewhere with my partner and the dogs. We've got so many animals. Well, dogs and chickens. A little bit restrictive, so you tend to have to stay close to home anyway, so staycation is perfect really for me.
And what about you, Lisa?
Yeah, I think I'll have to be incredibly cheesy and say my husband, because he's just lovely and he's my best friend. So we tend to do. And now that our daughter's just gone to university, so we're sort of getting used to being just us again, and it's quite nice because we're going for long walks together and things like that. And I think that's what we would do if we were staycationing. That's the kind of thing that we would be doing anyway. So, but he's a complete loon. He's great fun, and we laugh a lot. So that's my idea of a great staycation, just having lots of fun. And I think he'd probably be the best person to do that with.
Lovely, thank you. Got another question from Linda Hill. It's a great question. Aside from love, what 2 other aspects of life are essential for happiness? Lisa?
Ooh, for me, it's music, definitely. Because I love music. I used to be a singer, and music's always been important to me. So yeah, I don't think I'd cope very well without music. And scenery, views, places to just sit and be, peace and quiet, that kind of thing. I like to, as I was saying just before, I like to go for long walks, and I've got a thing about trees. I love trees, so yeah, just somewhere to be somewhere where there are trees and nature.
Love it. What about yourself, Della?
Yeah, I'm totally with you there on trees and nature, and I love long walks too. And I would say friendship, close. I have really close friendships with women. I have some really strong women friends, and without, lockdown's been quite difficult, but we've been able to meet up and just go for long walks and talk, and it's absolutely fantastic. So also, of course, dogs.
Yeah. Same. Yeah.
And for me, it would be laughter. My husband makes me laugh every single day, and I think it's one of the things that makes, I'd say it's the main thing that makes our marriage work, because we do make each other laugh over really childish things most of the time as well. And then I'm really torn as to, because you both had such great answers. What was my other one? I was actually going to say teddy bears. So I'll stick with my initial instinct. I absolutely love bears, and all you need is love is partially set in a bear shop. I ran a teddy bear shop. I met my husband as a result of me having a teddy bear shop. I became a writer because I had the bear shop. So it just, bears are intrinsically in everything. And you cannot feel sad if you look at a teddy bear and give it a cuddle. They are there unconditionally for you. So, yeah, and they don't try to lick you like your dog does. Hello.
Oh.
Got a visitor. So, another question, great question here from Grace Power. Are you in any of your books? Oh, I'll take this one first. And yes, I am. I am Sarah, predominantly. So if anybody has read New Beginnings at Seaside Blooms, the main character in that is Sarah Peterson, who packs in her life and moves back to the north to run a florist shop. I packed in my life and moved back to the north to run a teddy bear shop. And the premise around that book was my true real life event as to what happened. And a lot of the questionable decisions that Sarah makes, I made myself. Most of it's fictional, but quite a lot of her personality is based around me. Phrases she used are my phrases. My younger brother read it and went, gosh, it's reading you. I can hear your voice all the time. Exactly how you would say things. And Sarah is actually one of the main cameo characters who crops up in quite a lot of the other books. So yes, Sarah, predominantly me. Della, you were nodding along to that one.
I think I think that as writers, bits of us are going to be in all of our books and in all of our characters, because it's unavoidable, because there'll be aspects probably of our personality. And yeah, I mean, in the one that came out last, Moonlight Over Studland Bay, the girl in that was called Sam, and her dream was to have an animal boarding business by the sea, in her cottage by the sea. But her actual real life job was as an audio typist, and I was that audio typist years ago. I never thought I would put that in a book. And why would you want to be an audio typist if you could have an animal boarding place by the sea? So, yeah, absolutely. And my mum, funnily enough, quite often reads my books, which is lovely of her. And she says quite often, I know what you're writing about. I know who that is. And very often she's wrong, because it's actually bits of me, bits of other people, bits of just things I've picked up. It's almost like a great big montage of pieces, and they all mix together in fiction, and they have to come from life, but they're so fragmented and broken up. It'll be very hard to pin something down and say that's a complete person, because I don't think it really works like that. I think we just use conglomerations of people and ourselves.
Yeah, it's a classic thing, isn't it, that somebody, a friend, family member, will assume that there may be a character in your book, or such and such a character, because it's got a little bit of a trait. And I'm not conscious of any of my other characters having even a borrowed trait from anybody I know. They're all completely fictional, but I think you're right, that elements of us come into them. So I think quite a lot of my main characters will have certain values, and they are generally mine, and they don't all have the same values, but they will be things that mainly I believe in, and that they will come out. What about yourself, Lisa?
Yeah, I think like you, the first book I ever wrote was the main female character was loosely based on me, because I think you, especially when you're starting out, you tend to write what you know, and write what's familiar to you. And so Mallory, the character in the first book that I wrote, was a Yorkshire lass, and she moved to Scotland to start a craft business, and actually that's what I did when we moved up from Yorkshire. The first thing I did when we moved up to Scotland was to set up a craft business, and making little hanging signs with phrases on and things like that. And I did that, but I only did it for about 18 months, because then I started writing and that kind of took over. But the things about her were loosely based on me, because I wanted to write about a woman who wasn't your stereotypical beauty. I wanted to write about someone who was curvy and who had issues and faults and things. And so a lot of my personality and appearance, I think, manifested itself in Mallory. And again, I think part of that was because I was writing. I was a new writer, but I was writing what was familiar, and because I could sort of relate to her, then her dialogue became a bit more natural. And I think that sort of, well, hopefully that came across. You know, that it was, it felt natural. Like you say, when people read it, they go, "Oh gosh, that's just like something you'd say." And I think there were definitely elements of Mallory. I could see elements of myself in Mallory, but that was the one and only time. After that, I haven't appeared in any of my other books. I've kind of hidden away.
I think it's interesting what you say about, with your debut, in that there's so much you're trying to learn, think about and do, and by not having to create completely from scratch your main character and how they speak, it is easier in some ways to base it on elements of yourself. Just takes that little bit of pressure off it. Okay, another question. Mary Grant has asked, do you have animals in your books? And the answer to this, and what do you think they add to your stories? So start with Lisa.
Yes, there are always, particularly dogs in my books. I'm like Della, I'm a huge dog fan. In fact, in my debut, I've got a dog he's a German Shepherd crossed with a Labrador, so he's a big white polar bear kind of a thing. When you were talking about your pup, Della, that really made me think about Marley, because that's exactly what he looks like. But he's getting on a bit now, bless him. But he Angus, the dog in my very first book, that was based on Marley, and then Ruby, my other dog, she's appeared in books that just her, because she's got quite a funny character. She's a Patterdale, and she's completely bonkers, but she's just got this wonderful personality. So I tend to bring her personality out through the dogs in the books that I write as well. But yeah, I do. I don't know. I think as far as what they add to your story, I think they add personality. I mean, in Dreaming Under an Island Sky, I've got a Hungarian Vizsla. Now, a friend of mine has a Hungarian Vizsla, and this dog in my latest book, in Dreaming, is based on Goose, the Hungarian Vizsla that belongs to my friend. Only I've called him Chewie because he's named after Chewbacca, the Star Wars character. But one of the things that people have said to me when they've messaged me about the book is that Chewie is just such a brilliant character in his own right. He should have his own story, because he's quite sensitive, but he's also quite lively, and he brings a lot of fun to the story. So that's and in fact, in the book that's coming out later in the year, I've got a Yorkshire Terrier called Nero. He's a tiny dog, but with a big personality. So I think animals in general, they add another dimension, because they do tend to have their own characters. I mean, they have their own characters in real life, so they definitely do in books as well.
Yeah, I mean, I love Chewy. I thought he was a great character as well, and a great name for a dog. When I set out writing, my intention was to have a dog or a cat in every single book, but it didn't need to be a main character. It could even just be an encounter with a dog on a beach or something like that. Now, in edits, I think there may be one or two books where there isn't one now, but I do like having animals in there. I have a dog, but it's the very first time I'd had a dog. I did have a couple of cats, but unfortunately they both crossed the Rainbow Bridge. My first character had 2 cats. The book I've just written, they have 2 cats that are actually named after my cats. And there's a dog features very heavily in the book I've just written. There isn't a dog that's owned by one of the main characters in All You Need Is Love, but there are a couple of dog encounters that are kind of pivotal to the story. There are obviously, yeah, he's agreed. There obviously are a lot of hedgehogs in Hedgehog Hollow, as you might expect. And a big one for me is in Starry Skies Over the Chocolate Pot Cafe. The main character has a giant house bunny called Hercules. And he's one who has a lot of comments, and people absolutely love Hercules. And I just wanted to make it a little bit different. I was very mindful I didn't want to make all of my characters animal owners, because for some of them it's not practical with what they do for a job. But it's also that appealing to the masses. Whilst, you know, there are a lot of people who love animals, they're not necessarily people who love animals and want to own them. And I just felt it would not be realistic if every single main character of mine had a pet, because that's not realistic of life. Della, what about you?
This is Muttley, by the way. Still come along. Funnily enough, I have a series dog called Foxy. He was based on a Greek stray who I brought back from Greece a long time ago, who's no longer with us. Lindy, her name was. And Foxy somehow developed her character, and Foxy comes in and out of all of the books. She obviously belongs to someone who's in the first book, but she's around and about because she's attached to the hotel. So she's a regular dog character. She's actually a 3-legged dog. And because I had the Sam with the boarding house on the last book, it was brilliant, because I was able to use all of my favourite dogs who I've ever had. They all ended up been boarded, like Seamus the Wolfhound, for example, who's one of my dogs. Was one of my dogs. I've only got 3 now, so I'm actually toned it down quite a bit.
Oh, wow. I struggle with one dog. That's kind of overwhelming, having never come from a family with dogs. So I'm in major admiration of anybody who has more than one. My grandma used to have 4 Yorkshire Terriers, and used to be wandering around trying to stand on them because they're so little, bless them. We've got a question from Lynn Hallett, but I think we've probably just about answered this when we talked about whether our characters, or whether we appear as characters, and the question was, how often do you draw on other people for your characters, and has it ever got you into trouble? And I'd certainly said that I haven't used anybody else. Do either of you have you ever used anybody else for that?
I think I haven't actually particularly based a whole character on a whole person, if you like. It's like Della was saying earlier about sort of pulling little traits from people and amalgamating them all together and creating a character that way. That's probably more what I've done. And I know my mum and dad appear in one of my books just because I needed a pair of shop owners, and I just thought, I'll just throw my mum and dad in there. So they're in one book, but yeah, the rest of the characters, I think it's been a case of maybe a personality trait or something that someone said, and I've thought, yeah, I'll make a mental note of that, and that'll, it'll pop up another time, but not deliberately. I've never deliberately based another character on anybody else.
That just reminded me, actually, my mum and dad have appeared in one of my books. I needed a couple who were in Starry Skies, who were regulars to the cafe. I've even called them after my mum and dad, because they liked it. But then my mum went, we're not quite as old as that, when I had given their names. Like, well, it's sort of modelled on you, wasn't absolutely you. What about you, Della?
I must admit, I've got some very eccentric friends because I'm quite eccentric myself, apparently. And so eccentricity and quirkiness creeps in. But very often, you're so right, it will be things, it will be traits. For example, one of my quirky friends told me that her dad was colorblind and her mum used to match she used to do his socks for him and color match them to his ties because he was colorblind. And I just took the traits, and I had someone who was colorblind and how it was used as a to actually tease him by telling him he had socks on that he didn't have on, that kind of thing, because he was a bit of a teaser himself, so it was a trait. It's always like that, I think. Quirky traits.
I like that trait. That's a good one to have. I wish sometimes I'd come across traits and think, I need to write these down at some point so I can remember them, and then I never do. We've got loads more questions and we're going to get through. This is fantastic, everybody. So I'm going to amalgamate 2 questions together. They're not related, but one of them's such a quick answer, I thought if we can answer it with the other one. So question from Grace Power is, do you write every day? And question from Amanda Rose, do you always like your characters and do your feelings change as you write? So over to Della first.
Yes, I write pretty much every day because I don't like to stop because I'm scared I'll never start again sometimes. And do I always like my characters? I have a deep affection for most of them. I have some quite wacky characters and I have an affection for them. Sometimes I might start off not liking them so much and end up liking them anyway. So yeah, I think so.
And Lisa?
I try to write every day. Even if it's just notes on I've got a gazillion notebooks, so if I'm not sitting at the computer and writing, I try and make notes at least every day, and also on my phone as well. And as for liking the characters, I've deliberately written certain characters that I haven't liked, and readers have had that same reaction, which is quite good. But yeah, most of the characters I've written, I've like Della said, got a bit of a soft spot for, and I've got a great affection for. But there are certain characters that really had to be unlikable. And so yeah, and unfortunately don't have any redeemable features, so even by the end of the book I still don't like them.
And for me, do I write every day? Most days. But if I'm not writing, I'm not one of these who you have to write every day. But if I'm not writing, I'm very likely thinking about plot point, working out some dialogue, because those characters are in my head. There's more room for them than there is for reality in my head. And as far as characters, I always like my main character. My main character will always be somebody, even if they start in a certain place and they have to go through an arc, I will always like them. And the point is, with the main character, really, you're wanting your readers to engage with them, relate to them, like them. But just like Lisa said, I have a number of what I call baddies, very childish language to use, but my baddies, and oh gosh, I love creating them. They are so much fun, and the idea is not to like them, but they are there to be the antagonist, to cause the problem, the conflict, and some of them will come out and they will have had a journey themselves and they will come out better. Some of them won't, and that's just how it is. But so yeah, and there was in one particular book, I had somebody who I intended to be a bad character, but when she arrived, she didn't want to be, and that completely changed. But then somebody unexpectedly became quite horrible, and so my feelings towards them changed. We are unbelievably at 7 o'clock already. I do apologise. Those questions we haven't been able to answer. Those of you who have asked them, you will absolutely still go in the draw for an ebook from each of us, or audiobook, depending on your choice. And what we'll try and do is go in and see if we can answer those questions. I don't know if they'll actually appear, though they won't be on Facebook, so maybe we can't. So I do apologise that we're not going to be able to answer those, but thank you for asking them. And just a final, very, very quick roundup. We were asked to describe our books in 3 words. So if we want to just hold up our book and give out 3 words very quickly. So mine, all you need of my words would be emotional, uplifting, hugs. Lisa.
Yeah, uplifting, heartwarming, and friendship.
Well, my partner said blue, papery, and rectangular, but I'm going for entertaining, feel good, and warm.
Oh, I love your partner. That's brilliant. Well, thank you ever so much. Really appreciate everyone who has joined us. I really enjoyed the chat with Della and Lisa. Hope you have done too. And wishing you all the best and happy staycations, whatever that might look like to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jessica. Bye, Lisa.
Bye.
Bye.